What's up, everybody? It's Pikel with League of Items, and in today's video, we're going to give an updated ranking of all the teams in the LCS. I have a tier list, but we're not going to go with the tier list the way that it is on the screen right now. We're going to go from 10th to 1st in the regular season standings, not even taking the playoffs into consideration. We're going to talk about each team, and then we'll throw them into a tier list at the end of it. Or I'll be doing it while this video is going on. So first up, we have Immortals. Immortals is a tragic organization. I think that their methodology for the roster creation this split was objectively bad. Their idea, and they said this publicly, so this isn't just speculation, their idea was to build around Revenge. Revenge is a league average at best top laner, and the idea that you could build something long lasting around a 22, 23-year-old top laner that's competitive domestically or internationally is just insanity. Xerxe is an okay jungler. He's league average at worst. I think that he can be on a competitive team. It's just you need to have good players surrounding him. He could do his job. I think of him, obviously it's really tough to say that he's as good as Santorin is right now, but if you told me that Xerxe and Santorin swapped teams and Team Liquid was roughly the same, I wouldn't be that shocked. Xerxe was very good back in the day. I do think Santorin's slightly better now, but that's not really saying much. Power of Evil is a good mid laner. And again, if you swapped out Bjergsen and Power of Evil, do I think there's a gigantic difference in Team Liquid? Personally, I do not see a huge difference. I do think that Bjergsen is better. So that small like 2, 3, 4, 5% difference is what makes Bjergsen and Power of Evil. But I think it's relatively close in that range. And then in the bot lane, we have Wild Turtle, Arrow, and Destiny. So Wild Turtle's bad. And you know, he shouldn't be. I don't have anything against these players personally, but he shouldn't be getting any more chances at the LCS level. He is not going to be on a team that is competitive long term. And a lot of these organizations, especially with the rise of evil geniuses, they're going to need to retool their rosters to understand like just how far ahead of them EG are. So I think that Immortals belongs in the lowest tier possible. They're not going to be competitive domestically or internationally, in my opinion, in the summer split. Next up, we have TSM. Huni, Spica, Takeover, Tactical, Shenyi. I don't know what kind of roster moves they're going to make, but let's just go lane by lane. So Huni, good player, not a great player anymore. I think that he can win games individually, and at the end of the season, they were giving him more resources to be a carry. But, you know, I don't think that TSM with Huni is going to be competitive internationally. I think that what happened in the spring split is not going to happen again in the summer split. I think that Spica is too good to let that kind of thing happen. Spica is a top 3 jungler in the LCS right now. Top 3 or top 4. In terms of talent, I know that the results haven't been there this last split, but that's one split. Takeover was good, but not great yet. I think that there's upside there, but we need to see more from him. Tactical is a pretty good AD carry. He has that playmaking upside. I do like Tactical in general. There are a lot of times where he makes like head-clutching mistakes, but you know, if you look across the world, there are a lot of very good AD carries who do the same thing because he's willing to toe the line of what's acceptable and what's not acceptable, and that will make him look very bad in some situations, but also very good in other situations. I think of him in the same vein as Jackie Love. He is not as talented as Jackie Love, and I'm not saying that he is, but that's the style of player that I think of Tactical is. And then Shenyi, I'm not sure if Shenyi is going to be on the team for the summer split, but I do like his aggressiveness, and I think if the team was able to utilize his aggressive play style, you know, they'd be much better for it in the long term. I don't expect TSM to be hyper competitive. Would I be shocked if they made playoffs? Absolutely not. So I think that we'll probably see TSM have a better performance than they did last split. Next up, CLG. So Jenkins contracts Palafox, Luger, and Poom. Jenkins is a good player. He's league average probably at best, though. I like Jenkins. There's nothing wrong with Jenkins. He could be on a good team, but he's not going to be the focal point of a good team. Contracts, I think the beginning of the season was absolutely horrible. He looked like the worst player in the LCS by far over the first couple weeks of the season, but that's a small sample size, and as time went on, he played a little bit better. I don't expect anything from contracts long term. I personally would say it's probably time to move on from contracts, because he is not going to be better than Inspired at any point in his career. And that's who you're competing with now. So that's unfortunate for contracts. Palafox, an okay mid laner, but again, he's not the difference maker. So at best, he's probably league average. He's not going to be competitive with players like, Bjergsen, Abadaga. I think that Fudge is better than him already. So, it's not looking good for a player like Palafox. And again, there are young players, and we would expect more North American mid laners to come in, like cycle them in, the younger ones, to see what they actually have. I think it could very quickly go the opposite direction, where we're overemphasizing youth, but right now we're not doing it enough, so there needs to be some kind of balancing out. And then in the bot lane, we have Luger and Poom. Luger and Poom played okay. I think that people want Luger to be really good. I'm not sure if he has that upside, but we'll find out relatively soon. I think that CLG is probably stuck at the bottom of the table again. I would be willing to make a bet on them to make playoffs in the summer, but that's really the extent of what I'd be willing to bet on them. So I think we should throw them in the D tier. Actually, no, not D tier. C tier is probably better. Next up, we have Dignitas. And Dignitas looked pretty good in the beginning of the season, but things kind of went the opposite direction for them as the season went on. I think that Fake God is good enough. He had a bad split by his standards, and I expect him to do better in the future. River came in and had a good first split. Wasn't able to be the big difference maker from a carry perspective. Like, he does get a lot of good ganks off in the early game, but it's really up to the rest of the team to kind of take that advantage and get it past the finish line, and they weren't able to do that consistently throughout the split, going 8 and 10. Next up, we have Blue. Blue had a good season, but I don't think that his upside is really being a top 2 or 3 mid laner in the LCS. So that's problematic. Neo, he's a very aggressive bot laner, and I think that he has his highest highs look like Danny, but I don't think that he's as good as Danny or as consistent as Danny is. And then Biofrost had a pretty good split overall. So I think River, Neo, Biofrost all had good splits. Blue had a good split. River, Blue, Neo, Biofrost all had pretty good splits. Fake God underperformed. I think that he'll do better in the future. I think that Dignitas will make playoffs in the summer, or at least be competitive for playoffs in the summer. So I have them right around TSM still. Next up, Golden Guardians. So Golden Guardians put together a pretty good performance, considering the expectations for them were very bad going into the spring split. I don't have high expectations for Golden Guardians. I think this was kind of their best case scenario, like sneaking into playoffs and taking a game off of Evil Geniuses. Licorice is a good but not great top laner. I think that he's league average at best. Pride Stalker, he's a good early game jungler, and in the right team environment, that could be utilized, but it's more because of the style that he's playing and how it's different. It doesn't have as much to do with his talent level. So I think that, unless the entire team plays around early game, he's not going to be nearly as effective as he was. Ablaze Olive is a good but not great mid laner. I think that Ablaze Olive can fit into a lot of different teams, and I think that he'd be an interesting player to see on some of the upper echelon teams. But I wouldn't expect him to be the primary carry. Like, if you told me a team has a very good jungler and a very good AD carry, and they need somebody in the mid lane to go even and play utility champions, play unique champions to throw the other team, catch the other team off guard, I think he'd be able to do that. Lost in Ale. Ale didn't have a great split. He's hyper aggressive, which I kind of appreciate, but he's just not a top tier support, so I don't really expect him to be a huge difference maker. And then with Lost is okay, but again, league average at best, so I don't expect them to be competitive with the upper echelon teams long term. So for that, I think that we need to kind of drop down Golden Guardians a little bit. I do expect Dignitas and TSM to be better than Golden Guardians in summer, and I don't think that's how the sportsbook's going to have it listed, so I'll be looking for opportunities there. Flyquest, we have Kumo, Jose Dioto, Tukui, Johnson, and Aframu. This was a pretty surprising team to me. especially in the beginning of the split. I think that Jose Dioto is pretty overrated at this point. His play style will make him look good. But that's like in the NBA, if you have a volume shooter and he scores 25 points. It's like him scoring 25 points versus somebody else scoring 25 points. It's not the same thing. His hit rate just seems so much lower. I don't think that Jose Dioto is going to be the best jungler in the LCS at any point in his career. And now he's going to be facing Spica, Blabber, Inspired for multiple years, and Closer probably as well. And he is never going to be better than those players in my mind. There are drafts where he can be successful, but that requires so much more. We're not talking about individual talent. So that's not great. Takui, I think, is a high upside player. I think that he understands the game at a deep level, and if you told me, a year or two from now, he actually got picked up by one of the best teams in the region, I wouldn't be surprised, because I think that he could be like that solid mid laner for a really good team. I don't know if he really has that huge playmaking upside to be like the focal point of a good team, but that'd be cool to see. Johnson and Aframu, they're a good but not great bot lane. They're probably the epitome of league average bot lane, which I think is actually a success for Flyquest going into the season. I think a lot of people were skeptical that Johnson was coming back, but that's fine. So I think with Flyquest, I think that Dignitas and TSM will probably end up being better than Flyquest, but I think that Flyquest has better long-term prospects than Golden Guardians. I think Jose Dioto is a better all-around jungler than Pride Stalker. And then next up, we're in the top 4. So these 4 teams I think are substantially better than the rest of the teams in the region. And we're going to switch over to the tier list at this point. And this is what my tier list looks like right now. So I think that Immortals belongs in the D tier on their own. The fact that they have no future prospects and their idea was to build around revenge, I think that they should be publicly shamed for that, so I'm doing that here. In the C tier, we have Golden Guardians and CLG. I think that they have a lot of league average players. None of them really inspire too much confidence in me that they have a very high upside in the future, which is a pretty huge negative for me. Like, Luger would need to be a top 380 carry in the LCS for them to be competitive, and I just don't think he's going to get there. I think he's just kind of overhyped right now. With Golden Guardians, their best case scenario, I don't really see a best case scenario for them. Again, Lost would have to do a complete 180 and show upside of being the best, if not the second best 80 carry in the region, and I don't expect that to happen with Danny being around, so that's kind of sad. Flyquest, TSM, and Dignitas, I think these are the teams that are going to end up competing for the bottom portion of the playoffs, and they all have some pretty big limiting factors on their team. I just don't see them making deep runs, but let's get into the top 4. So first up, we have Cloud9, and Cloud9, 100 Thieves, and Team Liquid. I think that you could put them in any order and kind of make a good argument for them. So let's start with Cloud9. Why do I think that Cloud9 could potentially be the second best team in the region? I think EG is the best, but why could C9 be the second best? If it was a fluke that they completely fell apart in the playoffs and that Summit was playing this highly variant style that got punished in playoffs, I don't think that is going to happen every time that they get deep into playoffs. So I would say their talent is very good. I think that Summit, Blabber, Berserker all have the potential to be the best, if not top 2, top 3 player in their role in the league, especially from a carry perspective. I think that Berserker's upside is immense. I think that he is really the only 80 carry. Well, he's the only 80 carry that I think has the ceiling that Danny has, if not higher. I know that T1 was very high on Berserker, and Gumayusi even talked about Berserker being a very good 80 carry that he was somewhat threatened by on T1, which speaks volumes about his talent level. The real question around C9 is Fudge a good long-term solution as one of their solo laners? And I think that he is. I don't know if that'll be top or mid, but I think that Fudge is good enough. And then their support role, Winsome was kind of scapegoated as the problem for the team. I don't think he really was, but they are saying that the communication was really lacking and kind of was a detriment to the team. So I kind of just have to take their word at that. So that's their best case scenario. Worst case scenario is that they lose Summit or Berserker or both, and then have to rebuild the team. Which I don't really care. Like, Cloud9 kind of deserves everything that they have coming to them. Everybody memes about the Jack post where he's like, C9 has a way of doing things, and that was their justification for getting rid of LS, and it failed spectacularly, and that was kind of awesome. Next up, 100 Thieves. And I think that Someday is a good top laner. I think that they might actually make the move to Tenacity and Busio sooner than later, because I think that they will keep their core together for the summer split, but going into next season, if Evil Geniuses is the top team again, I think that 100 Thieves kind of pivots into the youth, and knowing that in order for them to be competitive long term, they're going to need to peak at the same time as Evil Geniuses, which would be very exciting for North America to have a lot of good young players. I don't know much about Tenacity or Busio. I just know that they are very highly thought of prospects by some people in the scene that I respect their opinion. Closer is a very good jungler. I think that I do think that Inspired is better than him, and I loved the fact that Inspired went right after him in the post-game interview. He kind of said, like, Closer was talking a lot about how he was the best jungler in the LCS, and Inspired just thought it was funny. He's like, I'm obviously better than him. I don't know what he was talking about. I'm going to be better than him for a long time. And that's true. Like, Inspired's 19 or 20. Closer's a couple years older than him, but Inspired has already accomplished more from, like, individual performance level in his career. So I think Inspired long-term is just objectively better than Closer, and you can feel differently about that, but that's my opinion. Then in the mid lane, Abadaga is a good mid laner. I really don't think that we've seen the best out of Abadaga, and I think that we will in the future. There's something going on with their team that the drafts don't really highlight the strength of Abadaga the same way that it happened in the LEC when he was on Schalke. Because when he was on Schalke, he had extremely high highs where he was the carry for the team, and I really do think that is better for them long term. Because, like, if you told me we move into a meta where AD carries are more utility style players, the mid laner is more of a playmaker is more of a long term damage dealer instead of a playmaker like they are now, I think that would be a bigger benefit for 100 Thieves. And it's interesting to see that teams don't really, like, lean into that at this point. Because, like, you need to understand what your team does well and which champions allow your team to play that style. And sometimes it means going outside of the established meta, which, is problematic. But, they're going to be competitive in the summer. I don't think that this is going to be the end of them just because they lost in the finals. Team Liquid and Evil Geniuses both said that they thought the other team was more powerful than 100 Thieves. So I think that kind of falls in line with how I view them. But if you give me 100 Thieves at a discount, I will bet on them. So that's that. Team Liquid. So with Team Liquid, it sounds like actually had a lot of problems in the finals in terms of communication and playing as a team. Xerxe gave an interview with Travis Gafford that he seemed extremely frustrated and upset with his team, and I'll be very curious to see what kind of stuff comes out about their team dynamic, because I could easily see either Hansama or Bwipo like demanding more resources in Game 3, but then Bjergsen was like, our team dynamic in Game 3 was absolutely horrible, and it looked like it was making him depressed. So that's kind of sad. I think Bwipo is a top 2 or 3 top laner in the league. He can play every style of top lane, and he played very well this split. I think he can play even better. Santorin and Bjergsen, in my mind, are going to be the limiting factor for this team at an international competition. Bjergsen is a good player. Bjergsen is better than almost every mid laner in the LCS. Bjergsen is better than a lot of the LEC mid laners too, in terms of consistency and how a team can draft with him. But his champion pool is a limiting factor right now, and I don't expect him to be a hard carry consistently in the future. So that's going to be a limiting factor for Bjergsen. In order for this team to be successful at an international competition, Hans Sama needs to play out of his mind, and I'm not 100% convinced that I'm not 100% convinced that Team Liquid will allow him to play that style. He needs to play more like Danny does, in terms of like high octane, borderline griefing kind of play style. Because when you have a carry top laner, utility jungle, utility mid laner, and a very good support. You need that AD carry to be the playmaking difference on your team, and they didn't really look. They didn't look like they were playing around it that way, and it's because of the types of drafts they're opting into, because they're up against Evil Geniuses. So I think that speaks volumes about Evil Geniuses' talent and the stress that Evil Geniuses puts on the draft. Like not them putting importance on it, but them causing the other teams to reconsider their strategies because Evil Geniuses are so good, and their like upside is so high. So last but not least, we have Evil Geniuses, and I said this before the season started. I think that Evil Geniuses has the most talent in the LCS, and a lot of people probably thought that I was crazy for suggesting that. But in my tier lists back in January and February, when I was making the best in the West tier list, I had Evil Geniuses as one of the top 3 teams because I knew that this was in their range of outcomes. I knew that when you put together 3 very good, very young players and supplement them with Impact and Vulcan, you're going to have a combination of talent and upside that allows you to come in first place, as long as it all comes together by the time playoffs are finished. So let's talk about Impact. Impact looked very good in the finals, but I don't think we should read too much into that. I think that Impact's level, his talent level, has been roughly the same for most of his career. When the other team picks a blind top laner that can be exploited, he will punish it, and he can punish it, but he will not always punish it. He will not always be like, yes, draft me the champion that counters that. And Jat spoke about that a few times on JLXP and on the broadcast. So that's an interesting dynamic for Impact. Inspired, I think that Inspired is really the heart and soul of this team in the sense that he is the shot caller. He is the one who demands greatness of his teammates, and I love the fact that he's hypercritical of JoJo, and I think that JoJo has the mentality to accept Inspired as trying to help him. Inspired has gotten a lot of blowback from his time on Rogue, where players like Otoamne kind of leaked it that Inspired was the problem with the team's dynamic, and I think that that's kind of insane because in reality Inspired was the best player on that team in my opinion, and he is the reason why they were as good as they were. I know that Rogue looked good this split as well, but they went from Inspired to Malrong, and they couldn't get it done. And I think it's very possible that Inspired is just objectively better than Malrong still. So Inspired, great player, and I think that his mentality and his desire to win, which he has made very clear, and is like, he's abrasive to the point that he can like piss people off because he wants to win so bad, and he has like this insane ego, and personally I love that. I want my players to be like that. Jojo Pyun looks to be the same way. I think that the fact that he's so young and has embraced the limelight is great. I think that there will be times where it gets very difficult for him to have that mentality and personality when there are struggles that come, because there will be struggles that come. And that it just always happens. Like even the greatest mid laners of all time, like players like Faker, have had a lot of community blowback in the past where his team wasn't performing so well. They start questioning Faker and they blame Faker. I don't think that Jojo Pyun is that level of player yet. But if it is in his range of outcomes and he has spoken publicly about wanting to be that level of player, then he's going to put a lot of pressure on himself. Inspired's going to put a lot of pressure on him, and the fans are all going to put a lot of pressure on him. It's going to be important to help JoJo make sure that he psychologically is a strong player and isn't like taking on too much pressure. That's one of the only ways that this could fail long term, I think. Danny, best player in the West, in my opinion. He's one of the best players in the West. I think he's the best AD carry in terms of playmaking upside and the willingness to put the team on his back and take that risky play that can win his team the game. Not every AD carry can do that. Some people were talking on Twitter about, Danny versus Doublelift. And I think that me personally, I've been watching League of Legends for over 10 years. I've been playing League of Legends for over 10 years. I've watched thousands of games. If you put Doublelift in the same situation as Danny going to that Baron pit, do you think that Doublelift would have ran to the Baron pit, or would he have given up that Baron? Personally, I think he would have given up that Baron, and that's the kind of thing that we'll never be able to test, because Doublelift will never be in that situation again. But Danny is just better than him. I think that Doublelift was a very good AD carry and was the best AD carry in LCS history, but he is not anymore. I think that Danny has a higher ceiling than him. Whether or not it comes to fruition and Danny is able to stay on a competitive team for a very long time and win multiple championships, win multiple MVPs, that's still to be seen. But the league that Doublelift was competing in was much weaker than it is now. It's just the perception was that they were better than they were because all the hype surrounding the LCS. The LCS was such a big region, and he was kind of in the scene at the right time. And I think that people don't want to admit that, but that's just kind of the reality, in my opinion, as I see it, as somebody who's been following this very closely for the past 10 years. And then last but not least, we have Vulcan. Vulcan's a great support, first or second best support in the region. So that's basically it for this video. That's a little bit longer than I thought, but I think I got some good information out there. I think that Evil Geniuses, even if they don't repeat in the summer, this is something that gives Evil Genius fans the hope that they can be a very good team internationally, and I really do think that's in the range of outcomes now. They have 5 players that are good enough to compete on the international level. If Jojo Pyun goes to MSI and gets absolutely destroyed, then we will come to like a breaking point. Will he get much better because of that experience, or lose all confidence from that experience? And from what I've seen, I would just think it makes him better. And then we have, so Evil Geniuses in the S tier. I expect them to be the best team from the LCS, not only for this year, but assuming the roster stays relatively similar for multiple years. I think that Evil Geniuses are about to go into a dynasty period. Team Liquid, I think that a lot of their players are very good, but I don't know if they have that killer instinct where one of those players is going to completely take over the game. 100 Thieves will continue to be a good team. I do think that Closer has the upside with the killer instinct. I think that Abadaga does as well, but they're not playing around it right now, which I think they'll probably fix in the future. Cloud9, I think that Berserker has extremely high upside, and this could be a situation where you need to get rid of somebody like Summit to have a more go even top laner and then let the team play around Berserker. We saw something like that happen with T1. Kana is objectively a better top laner than Zeus, in my opinion, but Zeus's playstyle fits better with the team and the playstyle that they're trying to use. Then we have Dignitas, TSM, and Flyquest. I don't really think that they have the upside of being one of the top teams in the LCS. I don't expect any of them to beat Evil Geniuses in a multiple game series, for example. So they're like B tier at best. They'll be competitive trying to get into playoffs, but I don't think that they will be competitive in the playoffs. Maybe they get one win or something like that, but they're not going to make a deep run and compete for the title without some kind of roster moves or a fundamental shift in how they approach the game. And then we have Golden Guardians and CLG. Again, I think Golden Guardians, we got the best out of them this split. I don't see them doing much better or repeating that. I would like it if they did. I mean, I like Ablaze Olive. I like him as a player. I like his personality. I like how he talks about the game, thinks about the game, the champions that he's willing to play. But I just don't think it's there for their team. And then CLG, again, you need Luger to be like the best AD carry in the region. I don't think that he is. And then Immortals, tragedy. And that's it. So that's all I've got for you today. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe. Check me out on Twitter. Thanks for watching. And I'll talk to you later.